there are people that already have the lines tattooed on them now. Our fans have all these tattoos from the lyrics and Back from the Dead, and the album isn't even out yet. And it was just so amazing to be able to play that song live for the first time in these past couple tours, because you see it. You see them being like, this was the song. This is exactly what I want to say too. Now that we're back and we're all hanging out together. Well, this one was a long time coming, obviously, because of the state of the world. But it's interesting because I think the only song that we ended up including on this album that predates lockdown, BC, if you will, before COVID, if you will. But that was a terrible joke. The only one that predates the lockdown, I think, is Bombshell, which ended up, which the music was written by my guitar player, and then he ended up he ended up sending it to me, and then I wrote on top of it all the lyrics, and I actually produced those vocals myself because we couldn't get in the studio. So that's just the way it is. But with everything else in the album was written really during everything that we were going through, and from my perspective, lyrically, it all kind of started with myself, and I was writing from, I guess, probably one of the more personal, places that I've really ever done, because this was my only outlet. It was my only arsenal, the only tool in my arsenal, because we were faced with this unknown future. We were kind of in purgatory. We didn't know whether we were actually going to do an album. We didn't know whether we were going to tour again. And so all of these songs, are kind of this true, depiction of this journey and this roller coaster ride that I was kind of going through. But it's interesting because I ended up through the process really rediscovering why I write and why I love writing songs. It was almost like reverting back to when you were 14, when nobody cared about anything that I do. And you're writing your way through things, whereas this was my only way that I could actually get out certain feelings I had and certain thoughts. And also, really, what am I going to do about all this stuff that's going on in the world? I can't do anything about it. There's so much that I can't control. So the only thing that I could control at the time was writing some songs. And it was interesting because when Back from the Dead came to life, so to speak, we're like, oh my God, okay, this is exactly what I'd want to say if and when we get back on stage. And the song was basically me trying to recreate recreate that space in my head where you're almost trying to predict how you're going to feel once we get out on the other side of this, so it's very much a song of survival. I was asking myself, what would I say? What is the first thing that I'm going to say when we get back on stage? And because I have to believe that we're going to be, and not just back on stage, but back to whatever that is, whether it's, back to live shows, whether it's back to normal life, whatever that is, or back to seeing each other again, back to that community again. How am I going to say that? And so I was overcomplicating it for a while. There was a lot of titles that just really didn't quite make the mark. And so forget who says, somebody was like, yeah, it's like, it's going to be a revival. It's going to be like we came back from whatever. It was like hell and then Back from the Dead, or like Back from the Dead. Oh my God, that's so dumb. That was like the first initial. It's like, oh, it's so obvious and so dumb. Like, it's perfect. We should do that. And then so for a while, so right after the song was written and recorded, all of us were like, that's probably going to be the title. But then we just kind of put it on the back burner, and we came up with, I'm not shitting you, probably like 38 or something type of titles that maybe would have worked, but we kept coming back to Back from the Dead because it just says it all, and like I said, it's like, oh, it's so dumb. I can't believe nobody has said it yet. It's like hiding in plain sight right there. We have a tendency to overcomplicate things. So the fact that we actually settled on something like that was hilarious. And also, it's just so amazing. I got to tell you, there are people that already have the lines tattooed on them now. Our fans have all these tattoos from the lyrics and Back from the Dead, and the album isn't even out yet. And it was just so amazing to be able to play that song live for the first time in these past couple tours, because you see it. You see them being like, this was the song. This is exactly what I want to say too. Now that we're back and we're all hanging out together. And also, again, without having any of these other outlets, you're putting in all of the energy that maybe you would if you're out on tour or if you're on a stage into this album. So that's why everybody's just on 11, because that was the only spot. You realize that hole, that was taken from you, that can't be filled in it with anything else. As much as you can try to fill it with anything else, that feeling and that spot, that this band has in my heart. And I'm not even just talking about being in your happy place on tour, and like being on stage and having that, that adrenaline, that drug that you're just so used to having in your life. There was definite physical withdrawal from that. But this band, I've been in this band since I was 13. So it's the reason I am who I am. It's an extension of my personality. So when that went away, and there was no longer any plans to move forward, there was no mission, which is always just kind of the way we operate. Okay, what's next? How can we do this? How can we do that? That's part of what we do. When that's gone, a huge part of yourself is missing. So I almost had to recreate and rebuild all of that stuff, but through songwriting. But in conclusion, at the end of the album, what I realized was that when you write from that personal space and kind of selfishly, like I'm writing because I need to say this, or I need to get this out, you realize that it becomes more universal, because the reality is that we all were going through the same things, even though it felt like we were all alone and individually trying to process everything. What I realize now on the other side of this album is that it became, there are millions of people that were going through that exact same feeling. So just these past couple of tours that we've been out and we've been playing Back from the Dead and Steeple, and we actually threw in Bombshell, and you're like watching these kids, literally seeing themselves in these anthems, and it's no longer yours, now it's their song. And so it's, if there's a silver lining with everything that has happened to all of us, that would be it,